When the Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave trailer came out, I went around online trying to gauge fan reaction and thoughts on the reveal. The overall impressions were extremely positive, but some people were a little confused or unsure about whether Fortune's Weave was connected to three houses. There were some extremely obvious signs that they're connected, so I wasn't surprised. Here's the thing, this video isn't about how other folks aren't worthy because they don't eat, sleep, and shit Fire Emblem like me. No, I want to point out an interesting Fire Emblem phenomenon. Fire Emblem is now a global series far longer than it's been Japan exclusive, and yet audiences outside of Japan have only experienced one complete Fire Emblem saga. So no, I don't expect everyone to immediately realize that Fortune's Weave is connected to three houses. Three houses could be the first Fire Emblem for some. A quick recap for folks new to the series. Fire Emblem has, or had a habit of connecting stories for two games. It's not just cameos or people traveling to another continent, but stories can pick up a few years after the first game, take place before the previous game, or even in between games. What makes these stories special is the feeling of coming home and seeing your favorite characters at a different stage in their life, and it helps expand the world and lore a lot more. We get to see the consequences of previous actions and how they influence a new war. Also, it's just nice to see your favorite characters again. We get to see how their life has changed after the previous war, or what their life was like before the current war. But then, the series just sort of stopped directly connecting. There are cameos where Fates tries to connect to Awakening, but it's not the same. Awakening itself is linked to the first three Fire Emblems, and the connections are mostly fan service rather than a big reunion. The only returning character was Tiki, a couple of thousand years removed. She's more like the Pegasus sisters appearing in Gaiden, or Shadows of Valentia. They're there, but they don't cross over with their stories. I have some guesses on how we got here. I can confidently say that we lost Fire Emblem New Mystery of the Emblem due to poor sales. Its predecessors, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, were also some of the lowest selling Fire Emblem games outside of Thracia 776. Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon also didn't exactly set the sales chart on fire. With New Mystery of the Emblem coming so late in the DS's life, they probably felt it wasn't worth the effort. I couldn't find any reliable numbers, but the fact that its direct sequel was Japan only says a lot. We lost a Fire Emblem in the middle after the series went global, but this is only about New Mystery of the Emblem. The other games probably had more convoluted reasons. Regardless of sales, following the normal Fire Emblem pattern, Fire Emblem Awakening would have to be a new story either way. Then came Fire Emblem Fates. The poor reception to the story of Awakening prompted intelligence systems to hire outside help in the form of a manga writer, Shin Kibayashi. This person has never written for a Fire Emblem game before, so there's no reason to expect him to want to connect his story to the previous game. According to interviews, his script was so big that it was enough for 2 books. My guess is intelligence systems had to narrow the script down to "Help me, stepbro, I'm stuck." The next game was a remake of Fire Emblem Gaiden, so that can't serve as a sequel to Fates. I guess intelligence systems wanted Gaiden to remain the odd one out, so they made 3 houses. The writers for Fire Emblem 3 Houses have also never worked on a Fire Emblem game before, and I can't confirm whether they're actually from Koei. Finally, with Fire Emblem Engage, intelligence systems wanted to tell a story about why Soren is the best.
Maybe you should keep your distance.
So it's like they've been throwing random ideas at the wall for the past 10 years. There was no coherent vision for the franchise despite its popularity boom. With Fortune's Weave, could this be the first time in a long time that Intelligence Systems tries to create a game that connects to the previous game? If they don't go full prequel or sequel, I can at least see them testing the waters. There is absolutely no doubt that Fortune's Weave takes place in the same universe as 3 Houses. Sothis, the hero's relic, the beasts, and the crests. They're all there. How intertwined the plot is with that of 3 Houses is still unknown. I don't think it'll be as deeply intertwined as the previous games, but it'll connect better than Fates or Awakening. You're probably not going to get the same feeling of reuniting with characters and seeing them at a different stage of their lives. At least, not for a vast majority of the cast. Most of them are probably long dead. I predict we will have 2 or 3 more returning characters. The reason is simple. Sothis is older. She's an Nabatean and takes thousands of years to grow old. So chances are, most of the 3 Houses cast won't live that long. The connection will be similar to Shadow Dragon and Awakening. Yeah, Tiki is in both, but she's the only one. However, 3 Houses does have a few Nabateans, mainly Sethith and Flame. If Fortune's Weave takes place thousands of years after Three Houses, they are the most likely candidates to show up. Hi, this is future me? Yes, I know, Seth is already confirmed. I saw the direct. I started writing this at least 2 months ago. Then I got distracted by Prehistoric Kingdom, then Dino Blade came out, and I had to drop that review to finish writing this. But this goes well with my original point. Me predicting Seth might sound cool on paper, but to folks following the series for a long time or really dug into the history of the franchise, it's like hearing me predict that water is wet. Back to the video. There's a possibility that Rhea might also show up, but I doubt she'll be a playable character. I mean, stranger things have happened, but if not, I can still see her appearing as a cameo. Then there's the elephant in the room, Byleth. How would that even work? Would we see the male or female Byleth if they do show up? Does Byleth gain Nabatean lifespan? At this point, it's whatever the writers want. I doubt Byleth will join you even if they somehow showed up. Hell, how is Sothis grown old? Is she technically dead or alive now? What if Sothis is dead and dead Nabateans age backwards in the realm of make-believe and this is actually a prequel? She can rewind time. Time travel shenanigans are possible. There is also the possibility of seeing the descendants or ancestors of some Three Houses characters, but I'm not sure how big of an impact that would have on the player when the character is many generations removed. We would have another Crom and Lucina situation where they're Marth's descendants, but they really add nothing to Marth or their own story. This isn't like seeing Eliwood and Hector when they're young, or the Grail Mercenaries' epic entrance. You just don't get that kind of connection when it's several thousand years removed. That said, having a few characters return is better than nothing. I just hope it'll have a meaningful connection to Three Houses. Hopefully, this game will sell well, and Intelligence Systems goes back to connecting their future stories. I want new fans to experience the same joy I did. This is a unique experience that only Fire Emblem can bring. It would be a shame if they abandoned this completely. Fortune's Weave might not be exactly what I want to see, but it's giving me hope. Okay, I gotta go back to my farm. There's magic, villager romance, and a dragon god that transforms into a human. It's closing time for the Dinosaur Arcade. I'll see you next time.
You have such a charming air about you, Soren. Why not showcase it a little more?
I'm too preoccupied with minding my own business. You should try it.